The real reasons the Celtics are struggling. One of the most historic franchises in NBA history has endured their fair share of hurdles over the past couple of decades. They went from being a slowly dying franchise in the 90s to a resurgent championship contender in the mid-late 2000s. A tone-setting era that started with the storied arrival of KG, Ray Allen and Doc Rivers to the Garden. However, since their big three departed for Brooklyn and Doc travelled out west to LA, this team has been up and down ever since, matching each quality win they've acquired over the years with a variety of disappointing performances. Brad Stevens, a coach that was once considered one of the best in the NBA, is now seemingly on the hot seat, and a variety of players have been linked to multiple trade rumours for months now. With a team that has 3 all-star caliber players, a first-team all-defensive guard and a renowned head coach, you can understand why Boston fans may be a little underwhelmed with a 20-19 record, which lands them only slightly above teams like the Hawks, Knicks and Bulls, all of which were projected to be fringe playoff teams. However, what is the real reason why the Celtics are struggling? We've narrowed down the biggest factors for the team's struggles coming up. But before we start, I want to thank our loyal subscribers and those who have been watching since the start. We really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to do so as we're trying to hit that 400 sub mark. Lack of depth. Going into the 2021 campaign, many thought the Celtics would rival the Bucks, Nets and 76ers for the top spot in the Eastern Conference. However, one area of concern that's drawn attention since the start of the season is their seeming lack of quality role players and depth throughout the lineup. While rookie Peyton Pritchard has been a massive contributor and veterans like Jeff Teague and Tristan Thompson have had their moments, outside of the team's big three, there really isn't a lot of firepower left over. And even in terms of the big three, their point guard leading the way, Kemba Walker, has had a serious decline since his early season injury and has since put more reliance on the rest of the team. The issue is there really isn't anyone to relieve the duties of Kemba, Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown when they're not on the floor. The team essentially let one of their top scorers from a year ago in Gordon Hayward waltz on down to Charlotte, where he's been dominant, and did nothing to replace him. Sure, they added a couple of nice rookie guards and a couple of veteran players, but they didn't add anyone of great value either through trade or free agency. There's been so much hope on players like Taco Fall, Carson Edwards and Robert Williams improving and emerging into solid role players, and yet none of them have really had much of an opportunity to show their worth. The team's headlined by 3 All-Stars, a gritty Marcus Smart, and a few nice young prospects, but they've done absolutely nothing to go out and acquire quality role players. This lack of depth has put immense pressure on Tatum and Brown to lead the charge and deliver wins on a nightly basis. This focus on their go-to scorers has placed a lack of faith on the rest of the team, as shown by their 26th ranked APG, which is at 22.7. This team relies solely on iso ball, and it's likely that has something to do with the fact that none of their stars feel comfortable putting the ball in anybody else's hands. Also, good teams have depth and typically have a couple of sound free throw shooters they can bring off the bench. But this isn't the case, as illustrated by the team's poor free throw percentage, which is at 75.8% and is 23rd in the NBA. And even the team's shooting percentages as a whole leave a lot to be desired. Boston also carries one of the weaker front courts in the NBA, as both Daniel Tice and Thompson make for tremendous backups, but neither should really be looked at as a reliable starter for a winning franchise. It would be wise for the Celtics to keep an eye on the trade market, as multiple talented big men such as Miles Turner, Andre Drummond and Kristaps Porzingis have all been mentioned as likely to be traded. And any of the three could make a massive difference if acquired by Boston. If this team puts the time, energy and money into acquiring more talent to surround their core, these numbers would likely improve as there'd be more options offensively. Inability to close out games. One of the biggest areas of concern for the Celtics is their inability to finish late games. The amazing thing about this team is that they're so bad in the fourth quarter, it's almost as if the clock strikes midnight and Cinderella turns back into a pumpkin. They generally waltz into the end of the game with a reasonable lead, or close in terms of possessions, only to completely fall apart as the buzzer draws near. This is shown by their horrid 24th ranked fourth quarter offense, their 28th ranked fourth quarter defense, and 30th ranked fourth quarter net rating, which is of course the worst in the NBA. To say that the 2021 Celtics struggle to close games out could be the biggest understatement of all time. Somehow, this is a team that's avoided the severe criticism they so wholeheartedly deserve for their inability to finish games. A lot of this probably stems from their seeming lack of continuity, ball movement and leadership, as players like Kemba Walker have missed large parts of the season and others have failed to fill the role. Kemba came into this young Boston team almost 2 years ago and made an immediate impact in helping lead the offense. He was averaging all-star numbers and helped Boston go on an inspiring run in the playoffs before losing in the Eastern Conference Finals. Kemba even continued this success early in the 2021 season, averaging 20.4 points, 4.8 assists and 3.9 rebounds per game before going down with a knee injury, and these numbers aren't too far from his numbers last season. However, since his knee injury earlier in the year that sidelined him for over 14 games, he's been playing far worse and has struggled to maintain any level of consistency. While the Celtics' struggle may not entirely be because of the disappearance of cardiac Kemba, it does feel like this team struggles heavily to move the ball, which was Kemba's biggest contribution, and relies solely on ISO ball from the young stars Tatum and Brown. This team literally has the worst AST percentage in the fourth quarter in the entire league with 46.6%, meaning they're stagnant on offense and have failed at coming up with a system to implement late in games. Poor playmaking, bad turnovers and an inability to move the ball present some serious issues for this team moving into the latter half of the season. They're extremely slow as a team, as they rank 21st in the pace of play. And given their inability to finish late in games, this lack of ball movement and willingness to get up and down the floor has likely played a pivotal role in the team's lack of recent success. They're also one of the least efficient teams on both ends of the floor, but specifically defensively, as they sit 11th in offensive rating, but 21st in defensive ratings. While slowing the game down can have its benefits, it does nothing if you still can't knock down your shots. As previously mentioned, the team's shooting percentages are horrid, and it's come to the point where Tatum and Brown can't carry this team single-handedly on a nightly basis if they want to compete. Conclusion. Boston's been one of the major disappointments this season, as it feels like only yesterday that they knocked a thriving Raptors team out of the bubble and nearly took out a scorching Heat squad on their way to the NBA Finals. And yet here we are, only months later, and this same Celtics team, with a couple of new additions, might struggle to even make the postseason this year. Especially as teams with playoff success like the Raptors and Pacers are still competitive in the East, and surprising yet scary teams like New York, Atlanta and Charlotte could do enough to push the Celtics out of a playoff spot. While I do believe that Boston's still likely to reach the playoffs this year, I mean, it is a pretty low bar for a team with that much experience and talent, I wouldn't by any means call it a lock or guarantee. And I wouldn't be at all shocked to see them get bounced in the first round and be forced to make some big-time decisions this upcoming off-season.